Hello and welcome to another amazing tutorial in Python with analystrising. Today I'm going to be introducing you to the world of JSONs. Now JSONs are a really efficient way of storing data in a very nice format, and it's a really great way of sharing information over the internet. A lot of websites will use, and companies also, they will use APIs to share information across the internet because it's a really great way of storing values and also telling the person looking at the JSON what that value means and what that value represents. So, what is a JSON? JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. But don't worry, we'll be sticking strictly to Python. And what it is, it's a data format used for sharing structured data over the internet, as I've alluded to earlier. And it has a very distinctive format where it has its key value format. It's sort of like a dictionary, but it's slightly different. So below I have an example of a JSON. So let's uncomment this and we can walk through it. I'll just show you what a JSON looks like. So we have our curly brackets, which signifies the start and end of a JSON. And then within the JSON, we have our key value format. So let's start with this line here. We have our key being our type, and we have our format being articles, or we have our, for example, ID being 42, ID here being our key, and 42 as a string being our sort of value, or we can have another example of age here as our key, and actually the number without the string, the quotation marks, turning it into a string as the value. But also within JSONs, notice here, that's why I skipped down a bit, is we can have sort of like a sort of multiple key and values within each main JSON key. And that's where it can get a bit more complicated. For example, data here is the key. And within the value of data, we've got a couple of key value formats within there. So that's just something to be aware of when you're working and looking at JSONs. Let me show you another example, this time straight from the internet. I literally typed into Google something like JSON example, and I clicked on a link and this came up. And this is another great example of a JSON. And in Visual Studio, it colors it quite nicely, but this is probably more of what it would look like when you're using when you come across a JSON. So we have our first name as our key, and then the value here, another key, and then a value, and then same one going down. Again, we have our sort of embedded sort of multiple values embedded in our key of address, just specifying a bit more about the address. And so it has a really structured way of sharing data. And you can share a lot of data. So this could be like representative of sort of one sort of person, and then you just have it repeated, within the JSON for another person, and they just keep going. And essentially, you can share whole data sets with JSONs. So what we can do now is we're going to uncomment this out, and what we're going to do is we're going to take a JSON and put it into our Python shell environment. And then what we're also going to be doing is we're going to be doing the reverse. We're going to be taking some values in our Python shell and we're going to turn it into a JSON. So let's get started. The first thing you need to do is you need to import a module called JSON. If you don't have it already in your Python shell, it's just a quick pip install and then JSON. But for me, it was already installed. So that was very kindly done for me. So after you typed in import JSON, we can go to a new line and we can type in we can basically create a JSON. So let's start from scratch. We have our exclamation part. We have our apostrophe signifying the start, and make sure you put one in for the end as well. And then within the apostrophe, we're going to have some curly brackets. Make sure they're curly brackets, and then we have one for the start and one for the end. And then that now we're able to sort of start building out our JSON. So that's a sort of overall structure, and we can now go in and sort of put in some values. So I've got channel as our first key, and then analystrising as our value. Here we've got age as the key. We've got 3, because I think the channel is 3 years old. I'm not sure, but I think so. And then we have type as our key and tutorials as the value. So here I've created this very, very small JSON with some really high level basic facts about my channel. And so what we can do now is we're going to convert this JSON put this JSON into our Python shell environment, where we can then pull these values and then use it however we want to use it. So imagine you've got a ton of information that's been shared with you via a JSON. This is a way you can put it into a Python shell and really start using it. So if we then type in JSON, calling our module, our imported module, .loads, and then within the brackets we type in the name, the variable we've given our JSON. In this case it's I1, just our first JSON. And then I've given that the name pass JSON1, because that's exactly what we're doing. We're going to pass this JSON, this first JSON, to then put it in our Python shell. So after we've done that, we'll just comment that out. We can now press print, and then pass JSON1, and then we can call a value within our pass JSON file, in this case channel, and we can run it, and we should get the name of our channel as our value. Oh, this is below, this is our second example, giving me problems. So let's just sort that out. There we go. So if we rerun it again, here we get our value of the channel, analystrising, and we can change that. So let's say instead of value, we wanted to have the type of channel. So we can put type. Remember to have it in the same format of your key. So in this case, it's a string. So we put our key value as a string in our quote in the string format, surrounded by our speech marks here. So let's change it now, and we're going to pass the JSON, pull the type, this case, which is tutorials. Notice tutorials coming in instead of the other value we had last time. So what we've done here is we've taken a JSON that in this case we've created, but we could easily pull this from somewhere else, and we've loaded it into our Python shell, and we're now pulling values. Cool. So let's do the same thing, but in reverse. Let's say instead of receiving a JSON and then doing stuff with the JSON, you now want to get into a point where you can convert some Python information that you've got into a JSON. So we've gone from JSON into our Python shell. Let's go from our Python shell into our JSON. So again, we import the module JSON. This time I've created a dictionary sort of format which dictionaries have the same format with a key and value, but it's not a JSON yet. We need to convert it into a JSON. So in this case, we've got channel again. This case, without the sort of extra apostrophe either side, we've just got the curly brackets representing the dictionary, and we've got key, value, again key, value, same sort of thing, channel, age, and type. But this is maybe a key and value, a dictionary file that we've sort of created within our Python shell. So let's now convert it to a JSON. So I've given that the variable I2, and so now we can type in JSON, and instead of a load, type in .dumps, and then call our dictionary file here, I2, and I've given that the variable name 2_JSON. So what we can do now is we can now, because we don't need to pull a certain value, we just want to convert the entire thing into a JSON. We don't need to worry about printing specific keys. We're going to convert the whole thing into a JSON. So if I run this now, that's hopefully what has happened. Oh, I didn't print it. So let's just type in print2_JSON. We should now have our JSON here. And here we go. This is our JSON. Completely unstructured, very flat. So what we can do now is we can start formatting it in a way that makes it a bit nicer to read, really. So first thing we can do is we can add in comma indent equals 2, and that will indent the sort of the main values of the JSON in a bit, so you can see really what the keys and values are. You start to get that separation like this. You see this? So it looks already, that looks so much better because you can really see the key and value as separate keys and the values relating to them rather than having it on a single line. And we can actually go one better than that. We can actually sort this from A to Z. We can go and then we can add after indent equals 2, comma sort keys equals true, and it will put it in alphabetical order. And so we've got here now, we started with channel, but now we've got age because A is earlier in the alphabet than C. And so we've now formatted that JSON to make it look much nicer and make it easier for the end user to read it and understand. So that was just a short introduction into JSONs and what they are and how to use them and put them into your Python shell. I hope you enjoyed that. I'm going to be doing a lot more on JSONs, and I will be digging into the depths of APIs in the future. So please do subscribe to my channel. Please do watch my other videos, and please do like, share, subscribe, and comment below. If you have any ideas of some tutorials I could do, or even different programming languages, I know more than just Python right now. Just comment below and I'll see what I can do. Thank you very much for watching.